We learn from each other's stories. At the end of the day, we gravitate and grow from what we share with each other as educators.
These are the stories of Azusa Unified School District as we strive to equip each and every student with the knowledge and skills to fulfill their purpose and positively impact society.
I'm Dana Mitchell, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
And I'm Jennifer Edick Bryant, Director of Metrics and LCAP.
Welcome to the Learning Collaborative podcast. We are talking with Estella Contreras and Heidi Johnson, who are our teachers on special assignment for elementary English language arts and English language development. And we're going to talk today a little bit about writing.
Heidi and Estella, tell us a little bit about what has led to your current approach to teaching writing.
Well, when we first adopted McGraw-Hill, the Wonders curriculum, a lot of teachers were struggling, and we were struggling with how do we teach writing? How is this curriculum going to help us teach writing? And so we started doing some digging, and we came across something called the writing traits. And I personally had no idea what that was about. And I'm like, Estella, what does this mean?
And we found them within the Wonders curriculum. It was that obvious that they're right there. Okay, they're right there, so now what? So
we did a lot of digging. We started going online to find out what are the writing traits so we could help teachers put this puzzle together. And it really was, it's not a program, it's just what does good writing consist of.
Specifically the vocabulary that kids need in order to write.
And it gives them a common language. That's really what the writing traits do. So we did a lot of research, and we came across somebody called Christina Smekens, which she does have this Smekens Education, and she has a website, and we got a lot of research from that website. We got a lot of resources, and that's where we kind of got started. But one day we were talking to Norma Camacho, and she asked us, hey, have you read The Writing Thief by Ruth Cullum? No, I haven't read it. She goes, you need to read this. She's one of the founding mothers of the writing traits. And so we took it home. Well, that day, I'd love to tell a story. I went to bed early for some reason and woke up at 12:30 and could not go back to sleep. And I thought, well, I'm going to read a couple of pages, and I'm sure this book will put me to sleep. And 3.5 hours later, I could not put the book down. And for me, for the first time as an educator, someone connected all the dots for me in writing. And I like to say, Estella and I like to say, I can't unsee what I've seen through this book.
Wow, that's amazing. Dana, you have some information about the book. Share a little more detail with us.
I do, and so I heard this as well, and I got really excited about it. So I too got a copy of The Writing Thief. And the title is about using mentor texts to teach the craft of writing. And there's one quote in particular on page 21 where Cullum says, she's talking about the 4 W's of writing. And she says, I've identified 4 key research-based dynamic writing practices, or the 4 W's: writing process, writing traits, writing workshop, and writing modes. These practices are the gold standard in teaching writing. When used independently, some gain is achieved, but when combined, the potential gains are limitless. Students in classrooms that embrace all 4 of the W's will meet and exceed any of the Common Core standards or state standards. They will have rich writing lives. That is a big claim. And we know that this isn't new, right? So tell us just a little bit about, what does she mean by that, and what's the impact as you have worked with teachers? What have you been seeing with this work?
Well, a lot of what we know is that we as teachers already are doing these 4 W's.
They are. So it's already happening. It's already happening in the classroom, and with the teachers that we've been working with. That's what we're saying is, it's there, and it's within our curriculum. It's just connecting the dots. And so we have seen that some teachers have just taken off. We have been invited to sites to share this information with them, and a couple of teachers said, okay, let's see how this works with kids. And one teacher in particular I'd love to share a story with, 2nd grade teacher, just said, I'm going to try it and learn as I go and see what happens. We were in her classroom, and the kids are thrilled to write. They're excited. They don't want to stop. They don't want to go to recess. When is writer's workshop? They're second graders publishing on Chromebooks. And this teacher said, I am having fun teaching writing.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what does it look like in a classroom for a teacher to connect these dots? What are some of the things they are actually doing? You mentioned the writer's workshop, but what are the things you're seeing teachers doing and learning with their students?
Well, just taking the reading, whatever, whether it's from the anthology or whatever reading they're doing, and doing the close reading and looking at the second read as a writer, so that they interpret the reading as a writer. And I think that has made a huge impact on our students to see the reading as a writer.
Mm-hmm. Something that we tell teachers is students have to notice it as a reader first. So that very first read, how does it make you feel as a reader? The second read, as Estella said, they notice it as a writer. And if they can name the trait, or if they can name something within the writing, then they can begin to try and use it in their own writing. Mm-hmm. And that is where teachers are finding that kids are being successful. It's putting a name on the moves that writers make, and being writing thieves when we are reading.
What does that mean exactly? To be a writing thief?
To see what an author does in the writing and mimic it, not necessarily copy it, but interpret it in your own writing. How is it going to make my writing stand out? To use some figurative language, or my sentence fluency, or particular words that makes the difference in the way my writing sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that how the author mentions using mentor texts? Is that what she means when she says using mentor texts?
Yes, and so taking those stories that kids love to hear, the stories within our lit anthology, because those are all authentic literature, and having them be our co-teachers, as teachers, the mentor texts become our co-teachers, and using the text to see what does good writing look like. In The Writing Thief, it's really interesting. She actually interviews authors, and they talk about being writing thieves, that they don't just sit down and begin writing, that there's a lot of research that goes behind that picture book that they create. And I think letting kids know that it's hard work, and that you can take from others their moves or their styles and make them your own, kind of a starting point. So I guess the big aha for me was calling out the mentor text to our students. Kevin Henkes is one of my favorite authors, and once I started reading this, it took me back to a student who one day just naturally started drawing boxes. If you're familiar with Kevin Henkes, one of his moves is he has boxes with illustrations in it to kind of tell you and guide you through the story as a form of organization, and then the text follows. And one of my students did that, and I was so thrilled at the time, but I didn't realize really what he was using was mentor text to help his writing.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. I think you were sharing a story with me about a second grade student and something about the thought bubbles. Was that a second grade student? Or tell us about what you noticed from a student.
It was a first grade teacher that had, we had introduced it.
Actually, it was a kindergarten.
Oh, kindergarten.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
there you go.
more
See?
impressive.
Great.
And what she did is we had just introduced the traits to her, and well, why don't you tell the story? It was more related to you.
The next day, Estella and I were there, and on Wednesday, she goes in and uses a mentor text, points out the speech bubble, and that afternoon, sure enough, the student used the speech bubble.
2 students.
There you go, 2 students using speech bubbles in their text, in their illustrations, to give more insight on what the character was thinking. And the student expressed that. It wasn't just drawing a speech bubble because they thought it was cool, had tied it to the text and what they had seen. So that 5-year-old used a mentor text to elaborate and explain what his character was thinking in his drawing.
So what do you think are some of the biggest barriers that teachers face in writing, and how is this work with this textbook, this text, helping you overcome those?
I think, we're all working really hard, and we're good at what we do, and we've had success, and change is hard. And so I think one of the biggest barriers is to figure out that this isn't saying let's throw everything we know away. And sometimes when somebody comes to you with something new or something to learn, you think, well, everything I've been doing has been wrong. And so maybe it's not a barrier for the teachers, but for us, something that we're having to really express to teachers is it's not something new. You're already doing it. It's just putting giving the children a common vocabulary, giving teachers a common language in writing. In The Writing Thief, she talks about science, math, those studies, they all have a common language. In math, it's addition, subtraction, multiplication. Why do we not give that to students in writing and having a common language? And that common language are the writing traits. So that a student, when she goes from my class to Estella's class, doesn't have to relearn what is it that this teacher wants from me from writing. If we're all speaking the same language, we're just making it easier or giving that tool to our students. So,
Great.
Can you tell me a little bit about just the writing traits and how that works? You've talked a little bit before to me about not teaching one trait in isolation, but how the traits all work together. What does that look like in writing instruction?
If you think of your favorite book, think of it, what makes that book speak to you? So you look at the separate things, but when you really think about it, they really intertwine. You have ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. But all those make the reason why you love that book, and those are the 6 traits that we focus on.
It's interesting that you mentioned the conventions piece because there's a lot of conversation about how you actually teach grammar and sentence structure in the writer's workshop process. And I think something that is noteworthy is no matter what grade level, whether you're elementary or secondary, that it is about the organization and the purpose, right? And what we want to say that really we focus on first. And when we're talking about revising and editing our ideas, that's really where, some of that grammar instruction can take place. But that's very difficult to do in isolation. If the students don't already have their ideas and their evidence and elaboration really worked out, it's tough to be able to come in and just say, well, let's do some, work around syntax, right, and grammar and word choice and whatnot. So my advice really when teaching writing in the writing process is really let kids have the opportunity to get their thoughts on paper, get their ideas on paper, and then really learn to organize and then develop their ideas through elaboration, through citing that evidence. And then as they get to the editing and the revising portion of that, that's really what comes last. And sometimes I think we have a tendency to rush to, the grammar and the punctuation, right? And so trying to hold off on that until the very, very end, because it really gives students an opportunity to focus in on, I think, their ideas first.
Right. And then teaching those lessons of grammar and punctuation within the context of something versus as a standalone grammar lesson that really gives the students nothing to hang their hat on to connect it to what they're doing and learning through writing and through the other content areas.
Yeah.
Something I'd like to share what that one teacher did during the revising, with all the work that we've done with collaborative conversation and the drivers, that it all really ties together. When I say that the dots are being connected, they are all the dots in all the work that we're doing. Because, so this teacher, they would write, and then as they're going to revise, she had them red dot the school video recorder, read what they wrote into the recording. Because it's very different to experience it if you're reading it, especially at the first, second, third, fourth grade, to experience it if you're reading it on paper versus hearing it back. And so they record their reading and then they have to listen to it back, and then they go to their peers and ask for feedback. So we're bringing in the conversations for our English language learners, the importance of that, of being able to hear it, being able to have that conversation and talk about it. So all the work that we've been doing the last 2 years tie in perfectly with this because, as we know, Reading and writing
Float on a sea of talk. Yes.
Yes, Burton.
So, and then there's another quote that I really just, to pique your interest in, and I'm telling you, it's worth every penny to buy this book. Reading is like breathing in, and writing is like breathing out. And if
Nice.
we can get that for our kids to understand that at the end of the day, we want them to speak their mind. And the way that we do that is through writing. That's how we leave our mark on the world. And if they understand that what they read, they can take in, make their own decisions, come up with their own, thoughts, and then put that on paper, that it's there for the world to read, and that their voice matters, and that yes, they might not be writing at grade level, they may not be reading at grade level, but every child has something to say and they can think. And so how do we get that on paper, and how do we teach them that it matters?
Great. What a great way to end this podcast with such profound words. Thank you, Heidi and Estella, for your time today.
And thank you both so much for sharing your insight and sharing the things that you've been learning. We really appreciate, just really taking the risk, right? This is our very first venture into podcasting. And really one of the things that we want to do this year is really focus on telling our story collectively, individually, and providing people an opportunity to talk about what we're learning. And as we head into this new decade, we are a learning organization. And it's just about, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but what we want to do is we want to take a look at the wheel, and we want to see what's working and how do we just continually improve the work that we do with students. And so thank you both for your work and for the work that you're doing at the school sites and supporting teachers and being willing to take a risk today with us and try this podcast. And for those of you who are listening, they referenced the book, The Writing Thief, Using Mentor Texts to Teach the Craft of Writing by Ruth Cullum. If you're interested in learning more about this, we have a couple of books that we would love to loan out if anybody's interested in reading that. Also, if you are interested in learning more about the writing traits and writer's workshop in your classroom, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, we would be happy to partner with you. Just go ahead and send us an email. You can send Dana, Jen, or Heidi and Estelle an email. Any of the TOSAs, and just say, hey, can you come and can we talk about this? And we would be happy to partner with you in any way regarding this, and just talk about what that might look like in your classroom. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.